So the first idea that I'm going to be doing for this video is the fur pelt idea, in which you use fur pelts to make fur armor. Now this is basically going to be the color scheme of what I'm going to be using for, quote unquote white, like white and fluffy. I can do this in two ways. Let's see what if I make a color fade, let's see what that looks like. And making a fade simply just means that I'm taking the lightest textures and I start to make it from the lightest to the lowest texture on one texture. And the other thing is doing the same thing using a different item, model, whatever it is, and I'm basically doing the lightest to lightest pixels to the lowest pixels, and I want them to be like the same consistent number. That way I have an equal fade from highest to lowest on both textures. So now that we have a fade, let's edit this one. And I edit with the fade by taking the light texture from the original, and since now I have an equal fade of the others, what I do is I just copy the lightest texture of one, so basically the value of the fade, so it's fade 1, and I do like fade 2 of the, or fade 1 to fade 1 for both of them, and I just kind of like use it as like a translation key. That way I just copy them all over and make them the equal values. If that makes sense, as you can kind of see like what I'm doing. I ended up grabbing rabbit hide because I wanted to see how it would look on the rabbit hide because I'm not really too much of a fan of it being on the leather. Hmm. These don't necessarily, I don't know, to me they don't really look like fur. They just look like unsaturated. But like for some reason when I look at the dog, I mean, I don't know. For some reason the dog itself, looking at the dog in the game doesn't look unsaturated, but like I guess it's a very unsaturated color. Let me try and let's see what the. I'm looking at this polar bear like this, and the first thing I'm seeing is bone blocks. I just see in bone blocks. This looks like the white fluorescent light. But fluorescent light or not, it's still a texture, so I just need to make a quick color fade and compare it. And apparently he is one short, so I just kind of put in the nose so that it's even though it doesn't really look good. But since the rabbit hide actually has one less color, I'm most likely going to have to put it on the rabbit hide. And the first thing I really noticed is that because the polar bear has a yellowish tint in its fur in the second part of the fade, that automatically starts to make it look better, and I personally like this a lot better. I like that. I like that. Now let's do it to the leather, because so far I'm liking it better than what it was. So because of that extra nose piece, I was right, it looks terrible. So what I do is I just know that it's supposed to be a darker color. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll invent colors even though it's not the exact scheme. It's okay because, well, this is all custom anyways. Let's do what I would normally do sometimes. For PLT. Alright, so I think it's more logical to go with this one. We can close out of that now. Alright, so we're going to export this. Export as. This is going to be called fur pelt. Even though this is an armor material, I'm still putting it under mob loot because it is dropped from mobs. Self-explanatory. So the fur pelt aspect is practically done. Um, we need to make a drop from polar bears and wolves. So these aren't my mobs, these are Minecraft mobs, meaning that I'm going to have to take their, in the files, so I have to go into the Minecraft, the data, and then I have to go into the loot tables, and I have to create one for the polar bear and the wolf, and then I just have to add them in, just as the items. For the polar bear, since it already has a loot table, I just have to add it in, compared to the wolf, where it doesn't have any loot tables, it's not supposed to drop anything, so now it's going to drop something, because I'm going to personally add it. So now let's see if it works. Guys, I got the fur pelt. Oh my goodness. I don't know why you have to be such a large creature. But either way, bottom line, it works, and that's pretty much all that matters. I'm getting the fur pelt from both the wolf and the polar bear. Since this is going to be an armor, I have to go into my mod armor materials and add the material called fur. Since the suggestion said that it wanted to be a copy of leather, I had to double shift and then look up the enum, I think it's an enum or a class, for armor materials, and then I had to look it up. I think it's an enum. What it was, that way I can copy it over one by one, and then that way they are basically the same as leather. We're not making tools, we are just making the armor. So when I add the fur armor to my mod items, I will be able to just copy over the life armor, because the life armor is the same thing where it's not going to have a tool set, it's just an armor set, and then all I have to do is change basically the name, all the parts that say life, turn them into fur. Though another difference is that the fur armor does not have a perk like a life armor does, so I have to change the helmet and just make it just say the fur, or the just make it say armor item, and then obviously make it so that the fur as an armor material. That way, when I'm trying to make the armor, it'll recognize that fur makes fur armor. Now, the texturing of everything is pretty simple and easy, but I just want to point out all the textures real quick because the texturing of the armor comes into two parts. I'm going to go over the first one really quickly and then mention something about the second. So, the armor pieces in the first part are just the items. And with that, I can copy color just as I normally do, and everything's just fine like that. But because it's the armor, it's not the model. This is just showing the stuff that I hold, not necessarily how I wear it. And so these are just only the textures that you would just see in either your inventory or in your hand. And the second part is the model, not not the items that you're holding. This isn't really obtainable in the game, which is why people don't necessarily think about it. But the model is basically how it looks on your body when you put it on. Um, and stuff like that. So that's the part that I'm texturing, and it comes into two parts. Basically, your helmet and chest plate, and then the bottom part, which is your leggings and boots. Another very important thing also to mention is that I called the fur armor material fur. It's just called fur. So when I export this, it has to be called fur layer 1. Whatever you call that material, it's material, whatever it is, and then it's layer 1, and then obviously for the leggings it's going to be whatever the material is, layer 2. So going into how it looks and feels requires me to give myself the items. I can do this through the creative inventory before I give myself the recipes that allow me to make them and see if they're working. This is mainly just putting them on, making sure that the sounds are correct, making sure the names are correct, and then lastly, or most importantly, making sure that the textures are correct. I need to be able to walk around and make sure that it looks nice, white and fluffy as suggested, or as close as I can get to the suggestion, but it comes down to, how does it feel, also looking at the armor, how much strength it has, and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I think that the items look okay, and personally, I don't. I guess it kind of looks white and fluffy. I mean, eh? I mean, I guess. I did copy color over the thing, and I guess, like, if I had to make some, like, touch-up textures, I'm not very good at models like this. At all. I'm better at like the items, and even then the items kind of look pretty bad. The items probably look worse than the model in this case, because the model actually looks the more white and fluffy than they do in the hand. In the hand, they kind of look a little I don't know, like what you would consider it. But the wolf drops the fur pelt, so as far as I know, this is completely working. Well, technically, to finish up that idea, I just had to add in the recipes, but let's move into the next idea, which is the chicken sandwich. I already have a pre-made recipe for this, which is going to be made out of sliced bread and some cooked chicken. I wanted to give a bun top, a bun bottom, and then basically some chicken in the middle. I don't know if I want it sticking out or just like a nice smooth sandwich, but this is the idea. So for the chicken, what I'm going to try and do is I need to turn it upside down, and then I need to somehow slap it on the bun and somehow make sure that a bottom bun can fit in there and figure out how I'm going to do it. As you can see, this is very unsymmetrical, and I was just gonna do like some erasing and figuring it out. I was having a lot of trouble actually figuring out how exactly I wanted to do this. So then I thought, all right, let's put the bottom bun in, and let's see basically what it looks like, and see if anything, any touches look like they need to be made or something like that. How thick do I want the sandwich and things like that. That could also help me, and then I can erase anything that's excess, I guess. The oddest solution I had was to make the exact dimension I wanted of the chicken, and then basically, like, you know how, like, you distort something, like, when you just make something the purposefully, the wrong measurement? I basically did that. Now, it does take some of the off pixels, but I can just recolor them in. But basically what this is going to do is make a 12 by 2, very squished chicken. So this is the most distorted thing ever, but this is the exact measurement between the bread slices that I wanted to make so that it can fit. I wanted the bun to be 1 pixel wider, so I just recopied it and then just dragged over 1 pixel so it'll be 1 more pixel extra. But then I realized the chicken's looking a little short, so because I remember I had put the chicken in, but when I copied it and then pasted it over to the chicken, it was looking a little extra thick, and it turns out I don't want it sticking out. That was an idea that I originally wanted it, but then I changed my mind because I felt like this looks a little odd. So then what I ended up doing was I had to like recopy and like paste the original texture into the chicken, because I wanted it to be the missing the center pixels, and then I just erased the edges, and then I gave it a good look. I think it looks great. There was 1 pixel that I would like that I could change it towards the center. I could make it like a nice like whiter tinge like the rest of them. But other than that, I think this looks great. So I can just export it, put it in the game, and then I have the chicken sandwich. And then here, as you can see, the recipe: 2 slices of bread, chicken in the middle, and then I have the chicken sandwich. And the saturation and hunger is also 0 0.8 saturation and gives me the 4 hunger, which is the 2 bars. Um, this is set because somebody suggested it to me, but it was just something I wanted to mention. And personally, I always like to save the best idea for last. I actually went onto the Minecraft wiki and I wanted to look up the effects because I wanted to see what color speed exactly was. And it turns out it's called electric blue. And now that I have the electric blue on here, I can just copy the values and then I can put them into my the GIMP. That way, when I'm making the texture for the necklace that I'm making, I will be able to have the exact color of the effect I'm looking for. So it's the Amulet of Acceleration. I want the main color to be the color of the effect because it gives you the effect, and I think it's a nice detail to have. And when actually making the necklace, I actually didn't have a reference. I had no idea what to reference in the game, so I actually had to make this entire thing by scratch and hand. I had just the only pixel I really wanted was the exact color that I wanted was for the amulet to just be the color of the effect. And so I gave it a little bit lighter because I want the light in the top left corner and then the darkness in the bottom right. So I kind of retextured some of the things in the amulet, but its main color focus is that electric blue color that is seen in the effect of speed. So I had that as the amulet, and that is also to also make it look like it's got a little bit, a little bit better texture. But when it came to the necklace, I wanted it to look like it's got some like curves and stuff like that, so that it kind of feels more like a chain. And like I said, lights all the way to the left, darkness is on the bottom right, and things like that. And I did that to make sure that it kind of that way it kind of looks like an amulet. This is the best I did in such a an easy job. But this is pretty much how the necklace came out, and I'm pretty happy with it actually, especially without using a reference. Now, the actual amulet idea, this took me about a couple of days of how I wanted to do it like this. So I ended up having to make it its own custom class. It's called the amulet item, and it's the use on block method, which uses context, and it has two contexts. That the player entity gets the context player, and that the player entity will get the status effect when they click on a block, basically. The duration is for 200 seconds, which is 10 seconds, and it'll actually be speed 3. So that makes it like the fastest sort of like thing of the game. It's the only way to get speed 3. That way it also has its unique characteristic, and that was just something that I wanted to put in the game. So that's what makes it special. All the other things beyond that, that's just for its functionality. Everything else is just it's just a casual item, so you implement it as such. I feel like this is my favorite item in the series, most likely because that this was the hardest material for me to make. I ended up making it by myself. I went through many processes to try and get this to work, and eventually it's working the way that I wanted it and the way I intended it. But that's I'm just glad that it works, and I'm glad that it's in the game. So, but that's pretty much all I have for today. So, thank you guys so much for watching, and without further ado,